Hello, and thank you for joining me. Thanks for clicking the link. If you don't know me, my name is Warwick Jackson. This is a personal message to all of you about a subject that affects us all. Not a very nice subject, I'm afraid. The topic is assisted dying. But if you could just give me your attention, please, I would so appreciate it, not for my sake, but for your sake, because this is something which is going to affect us, most of us, at some point in our lives. And the time to talk about it is right now. You may have heard a lot of talk in the media. There's a lot going on at the moment, and not all of it is accurate. I'd like to right a few wrongs if I can. But I think it's important that we have an informed debate. And this is why I wanted to deliver this as a personal message to each and every one of you that's got the tenacity to hear me out through to the end of this podcast. So I hope you manage to do that. I know it's not fun, and it's not fun for me to do it either. There's lots of other things I'd sooner be doing. So, but let's just quickly do this as quickly as I can. So I'm supporting the legislation which is shortly to go before Parliament. There's a bill that's been presented that will shortly be voted upon to introduce legal assisted dying in this country. At the moment, assisted dying is illegal. Now, if I can just clear up a few misnomers. First of all, what is assisted dying? What's being campaigned for is that assisted dying should be available to those who are in the final stages of a terminal illness. The last 6 months specifically of a terminal illness. And for those people that should wish to apply for an assisted death, they would need to be mentally competent, adult, and in the final stages of that terminal illness to have that wish granted. This is a very different thing to assisted suicide, in my view. This isn't for people that want to make a choice to end their lives because maybe they're depressed or maybe there are other circumstances in their life which they can't deal with and they want to end their life. What we're talking about here is, I'm afraid, is just purely for the terminally ill. And I know that it's very sad because if they're not mentally competent, for example, if somebody has dementia, they could not request an assisted death, and that is very sad. It's very tragic. My own mother had dementia. She would have been excluded. However, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. We just have to get as close to it as we can without any moral transgressions. And so we believe that the best formula for that is mentally competent adults that are terminally ill. Those are the people, and only those, that could request an assisted death. Public opinion is now very much behind this. There was a poll done at the beginning of this year by one of the largest polling organisations in the UK. They actually polled over 10,000 people in every single parliamentary constituency in the country. And an astonishing result, over 75% of the population were and are in favour of assisted dying. That's not a marginal amount, that's a significant majority are in favour of it. And by the way, the question wasn't loaded in any particular direction. The question was asked fairly, and the demographic of those people who were asked was correctly worked out. So it's not a loaded dice. So public opinion is now in favour of assisted dying. And in fact, many countries around the world have already embraced it. Several states in America and in several states in Australia, European countries, including the Netherlands, and even here in the United Kingdom, we've got Scotland are looking at a bill that's fairly well progressed through Scottish Parliament at the moment, as is the Isle of Man, as is Jersey. It's Westminster that's last again, and I'm very concerned, along with others, that we don't get left behind. Why do I think we need a change in the law? Well, my own wife, Anne, who I'd been with for 37 years, she died in 2020. And she had what can only be described as an appalling death. I was there with her for every moment. Trust me, it was appalling. And I've been with people as they have laid dying before, several times in my life. And I thought I knew how things went. But what I saw horrified me. It was inhumane. I didn't think that in this day and age, with medical science being what it is and with palliative care being as advanced as it is, I didn't actually think in my innocence that people could die in the way that Anne did in these times. It came as a huge shock. I mean, let us remind ourselves that if we have an injured animal, such as a dog or terminally ill, that the vets can't fix and the animal is suffering, then we usually take that animal to the vet to be put down out of compassion. If we stand and watch it suffer, we actually do risk being found guilty of animal cruelty. There's a law against it. You can find yourself in court, quite rightly so, for animal cruelty. We don't tolerate that when it comes to looking after our animals. But we do tolerate it when it comes to our loved ones, because the way the law stands is that our medical profession have an obligation upon them legally to keep people alive wherever they can, even if that's against their wishes. In Anne's case, it was certainly against her wishes to be kept alive, because she asked her nurse, who was administering the morphine to her, to put her out of her misery 4 days before her death. And she couldn't do that. Anne had a peritoneal cancer, which was bearing on her lungs. It wasn't lung cancer, but it was pressing against her lungs. And she slowly suffocated here in this room in our own home over a period of several days. Her breathing got worse and worse, and it was just like watching somebody being waterboarded, except this went on for 4 days and 4 nights after she'd said, enough, I can't take any more. Can you please get me out of it? And our medical professionals couldn't do that. Now, we'd been told that Anne would get the very best in palliative care, and indeed she did. She had the very best. She had the maximum dosage possible of morphine, maximum dosage of sedative, which did not knock her out. The nurse that administered it said she'd knocked out grown men twice Anne's body weight with half as much sedative as Anne was given, but still Anne was lucid. She witnessed the whole event, every minute of it, and believe me, a minute feels like an hour feels like a day when you can't breathe. So the very best in palliative care was administered to Anne. It wasn't enough. And there are 6,000 people a year in this country alone who are in the final stages of a terminal illness for whom palliative care cannot help. 6,000 people, it's 16 people a day are going through the ordeal that Anne went through unnecessarily, whilst we put our dogs down out of compassion to make sure they don't suffer unnecessarily. It's absurd. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But we're doing it because it's what the law says we've got to do. I think we need a change in the law. One reason I've already given you is because palliative care is not a one-size-fits-all solution for people that are dying, as is proven with Anne and so many others. Another good reason would be to stop people from taking matters into their own hands, and I'm talking about suicide. A lot of people with a terminal illness diagnosis commit suicide. You know, I was talking with somebody the other day whose father took himself off for a journey ostensibly to get the lawnmower repaired and never came back. It was an excuse to leave the house to commit suicide. I mean, that ain't right. For family members, loved ones, to find a body for someone that has committed suicide rather than face the prospect of the kind of death that their prognosis has in store for them. No way. No way is that right. Something else which is wrong is having to go to Dignitas in Switzerland. It's totally wrong. If you're in the final stages of your death, you're too ill to go to Switzerland. I mean, trust me, when Anne was in the final stages of her death, she couldn't move across the room, let alone go to Switzerland. So to go to Dignitas, you have to book well in advance, like months in advance, and you have to be well enough to get there, which means you're not well enough to die. So people are going to Dignitas when they're too well to die because they're booked in. If they waited until they were too ill to want to remain alive, they wouldn't be up to the flight. It's appalling. Their relatives go with them and they risk prosecution because they're breaking the law, aiding and abetting. I know someone who's a policeman that didn't go with his own mother because he would have immediately lost his job. And you can't even bring the body back. The body stays in Switzerland. You don't even have a gravesite that you can go to. The fact that people are going to these extents regularly to avoid a traumatic death only goes to prove that the law as it stands is not fit for purpose. People should not have a traumatic death. They should have the option, if it all gets too much, to have an assisted death and save themselves just the last few hard yards, the tough bit that nobody wants. There was nothing to be gained in Anne's life from those last few days. All that it was suffering on top of suffering. There is nothing to be gained. So, what are we campaigning for? Of the various models that are extant around the world, We believe, when I say we, I mean myself and the charity that I'm working alongside, which is Dignity in Dying. We believe that the Oregon model is the best. It's been running for years. It is the model in which you have to be terminally ill, you have to be in the last 6 months of your life, 2 doctors have to agree that that is the case, independent doctors, and there has to be adequate judicial safeguarding, of course, and only then are the drugs prescribed. Now, you might be interested to know that when the drugs are prescribed, only a relatively small percentage of those people that have requested them do ultimately take them. That's interesting, isn't it? And you might think, well, if there's a small take-up, then why do we need assisted dying? Well, I'll tell you why I think we need assisted dying. Because, again, going back to Anne's case, to use that as an example, she was very, very worried about the way in which she might die. And she had a health business. She understood health. She knew how the body worked. She knew how this illness was affecting her. She knew she would suffocate. The trauma of that knowledge was added to the trauma of death. I mean, when you're dying, it's the most traumatic event in your entire lifetime anyway. To add on top of that the knowledge that when the time comes, the actual event is going to be unnecessarily gruesome, that's just stress on top of stress, isn't it? Is there anything that can be gained by that? Whereas if you've got a tablet there and you know that if it all gets too much, all you've got to do is take it. The amount of psychological difference that makes to somebody that is facing the certainty of their own death anyway is immeasurable. So no matter the fact that the bulk of the drugs prescribed are not taken, no matter each and every single one of those that made the application for those drugs had the peace of mind as they lay dying that if it all got too much, there was a get out of jail free card there if they wanted to play it. Such a load to be lifted at such a time in your life. That's really important. The other thing is that assisted dying would take an awful lot of onus off our medical professionals, our doctors and our nurses. For example, a few years ago, if somebody was in the final stages of dying, doctors were more inclined than they are today to administer a lethal dose of morphine just to save them from doing the last bit, you know, the hard yards, the tough bit. They would help them on their way and give them a shot, knock them out. I mean, morphine, take enough of it and your heart stops beating. You go to sleep. Nowadays, are doctors quite so inclined to do that? No, they're not. Because we live in a litigious age now where doctors get sued at the drop of a hat. And who can blame them for protecting their own careers, their own livelihoods, their mortgages, their families, just through trying to help someone, only to have a family turn around and sue them? My doctor did not prescribe a lethal dose of morphine for Anne when they could have. And I don't blame my doctor for that. I blame the law. So if the patient makes the decision that they want an assisted death, that's taking that onus off the medical profession. That's a good thing. I'm not saying it doesn't go on. I know of a hospice where they still help people on their way with significant doses of morphine, bless them. But they take a risk every time they do it, and fewer and fewer doctors are prepared to take that risk. As a consequence, more and more people are having unnecessarily traumatic deaths. Anyway, since we've cleared up the ground rules of what is being fought for in terms of an assisted dying package, you'll be pleased to know that key medical oppositions have dropped. Medical organisations, I meant to say, have dropped their opposition to assisted dying. They were opposed to it before, now they're not. That's great. So I've given you the reasons why I think we need assisted dying. Whether or not it's taken up by the patient ultimately is their choice. It is all about returning choice to people less fortunate than us that are dying, and giving them some dignity in the way that they die, not have to die the way Anne did. And we're faced now with a historic opportunity. This bill has been put before Parliament more than once. On the last occasion, it ran out of parliamentary time. So we've been up the ladders and down the snakes again. And here we are again, back at Parliament, knocking the door with a bill that was presented to Parliament a couple of weeks ago, thank goodness. And the current Prime Minister has said that he intends to see the bill through Parliament. That doesn't guarantee that it will be accepted, but he will see that the bill goes through for voting on during this parliamentary session. And of course, we are right at the beginning of a parliamentary session, so time is on our side. So there's every chance that we can do this now. However, even though this is a historic opportunity, there are some real threats against it. If you give me a couple more moments, I'd just like to tell you what those threats are. For the second reading on the 29th of November to go through, it needs a majority of our MPs to vote in favour of it. Only then would it go to a committee stage and they sort out the minutiae, the details, and then only then does it go on to the Lords, and then the Lords do the whole process again. There's a year's work there. That's if everything goes smoothly for us on the 29th. There's still a year's work ahead of us. Okay, this ain't going to happen overnight. If it's going to falter anywhere, it's going to happen on the 29th of November, and that's not that far away. And I'd like to tell you the reasons why I think that we have reasons for concern. First of all, the government issued a statement that cabinet ministers would be instructed not to campaign in public on either side of this issue, okay? And that's as it should be. Cabinet ministers should keep their views to themselves. They're influential people within government, and junior ministers and people further down the chain should not be influenced by cabinet. Okay, so I commend that statement. Now I'll tell you what's actually happened. Wes Streeting, who is the Health Secretary, and Shabana Mahmood, who's the Justice Secretary, have both come out publicly against assisted dying. Fan-bloody-tastic. Isn't that just great? The one thing that they said wouldn't happen, and it's health and it's justice. The two ministers that we both needed on board the most have said they don't support it, which is a view, by the way, to which they're entitled. But it's not a view that they are entitled to influence others with. This was supposed to be a free vote, where everybody votes according to their own beliefs and those of their constituents. It's my view that because we have a fresh parliament with lots of newbies that have not yet found their feet and are all jostling for position, that they could easily be influenced by a health secretary and our justice secretary, So that comes as bad news for us in the assisted dying movement, to have these two people publicly come out when they were instructed not to. That's bad. And I'm angry about it, just in case you didn't notice. Secondly, they have set the vote 29th of November on a Friday. Now that's a day when our politicians don't even have to be in Parliament, because on Fridays you are allowed to attend to constituency matters in your constituency. You don't have to be there. So if you're a rather unsure of yourself MP and you don't know which way to go and you're worried about putting your head over the parapet in case you upset people who might influence your career, dare I say, I sound very cynical, don't I, at some future point in time, then maybe that would be a good day for attending to constituency business. Maybe not show up, eh? That's another worry, isn't it? We need our MPs to be there on that day. We need them to be voting. And the third thing is, and this is what really concerns me, I've spoken to quite a number of MPs now, and I feel I'm getting my finger on the pulse, and I think I know the way it's going. And I think they're going to be voting with their own consciences. And you might say, well, that's as it should be. Well, it's not, because they should be representing the vote and the strength of feeling within their constituencies. So the 75% of the population that are in favour of assisted dying might be represented by the 0.001% of the population that happen to have the voting rights. The way a democracy should work is that our MPs should represent the opinions of their constituency. And that poll that was conducted earlier on in the year has demonstrated that an overwhelming majority of every constituency in the land wants to see assisted dying. But it won't necessarily go like that. I think a large number of MPs will ignore the strength of feeling within their constituency, and if they're against it, they will vote against it. They think it's all about them. It's not. It's about us. This is about the people. I sound like Citizen Smith, I know. But this is a public issue. It affects you. It affects me. It affects our loved ones. If you believe in assisted dying as strongly as I do, or even doesn't have to be that much, then we're all of us going to have to ensure that our MPs who represent us, A, turn up, and B, represent the vote or the strength of feeling within their own constituency. Okay? It's the only way, in my view, that we stand any certainty of getting this bill through Parliament, is if enough of us shout up. Now, I'm going to give you Dignity in Dying's website address in a moment. You may want to write it down. What I'm asking you to do is to tell your MP how you feel, and it's as simple as 3 clicks away. Dignity in Dying have made this so easy for us all to do. It's 3 clicks away. 1, we go onto the Dignity in Dying website, and I'll give you the website address. 2, you put in your postcode. It even brings up who your MP is. It does it for you. You haven't got to worry about finding that out. It brings up a templated letter. You don't even have to write it. They've written it for you. But it would be better if you used your own words, so they've given you the option to overwrite it and put your own words in, which would be more impactful. 3rd click is send. Boom, it's gone to your MP. You've done it in moments. If enough of us do that, if enough of us deliver the message wholeheartedly to our MPs that we expect them to be there, We expect them to represent the views of their constituency, and that their constituency has been polled and has overwhelmingly said that they are in favour of an assisted dying bill being passed in Parliament. Then hopefully we can bear some influence on our MPs and let democracy do the rest. That's the theory, at least. But all we can do is try. So I'm going to ask you, all of you, please, please, this is so important. I'm not asking you for me. Just think of your loved ones right now. They're the ones you need to be thinking about, not me. This is too late for Anne. Our time is gone. Okay? This is about you. So, could you please go onto the Dignity in Dying website, put in your postcode, put in your comments if you want to, if not, you don't have to, and press send. The address is as follows. It's Dignity in Dying, all as one. Dignity in Dying, all as one. .org, O-R-G, .uk /bill, B-I-L-L. dignityin.dying.org.uk /bill. The work has all been done for you. All you've got to do is send it. It'll take moments. If enough of us do it, hopefully they will listen to us. And if you believe in this message that I've given you today enough to share it amongst your friends, please share this video with your friends, and they might even do the same. And thank you so much for hearing me out to the end of this. I really do appreciate it. Between us, we might just be able to make a difference. Thank you again.